Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to Ed Up on the Ed Up Experience podcast, where we make education your business. And there's one thing I know, everyone, and that is that we make education your business no matter where we are. And today, I am traveling, and I'm in a hotel room, and one thing I have learned is that my podcast guests expect me to do the podcast. I may move them around from here to there, but if I put them off for too long, then, the schedule backs up. So I got to bring all my podcast equipment with me. And I did that here in my hotel room. I'll probably take a picture and post it online so people believe me that I actually do this. So I pack my T-shirts and my socks and my podcasting equipment. That's usually, I never forget my microphone or my soundboard, but I have occasionally forgotten a belt or pair of socks. So that's how serious I am about podcasting. And today we have a podcast host. That's me. I got an Italian last name. I'm pretty much Italian, Salustio. We also have a guest co-host and a guest also of Italian descent. And it almost sounds like a beginning of a bad joke. What do you do with three Italians on a podcast? And there's something that comes after it that will make you laugh. But in this case, we're not going to make you laugh. Well, I might make you laugh, right? I'm going to make my guest laugh, or my guest co-host laugh, as I perhaps troll him several times as he speaks. But I'm not going to do that when I intro him. And I'm going to intro him right now. He's got one of the best last names to stay out loud. Here he is. He's Charlie Anastasi. He is the VP of Partnerships at Rise Education, an amazing partner of the Ed Up Experience. Charlie, welcome back to an Ed Up mic.
Thank you, Joe. I might need you to start going with the middle name as well, Salvatore, and then we'll really get the Italian flow in here.
It's Charlie Sly, so I love it. I love Charlie, and you've been doing this podcast enough now. I would consider you now a veteran podcaster. I think you've done this with me at least 5 to 10 times, somewhere in there. It feels like.
I think we're on two hands now.
Are we on two hands? Well, here's a piece of advice to all the podcasters out there that want to come guest host at the Ed Up Experience.
Come on, guys. Early worm gets the worm.
So make sure that you're getting on it and that you're first to the table if you want to be here. And remember that among and with our great partners like Rise Education, we also have co-hosting opportunities for many of our presidents that we have interviewed to come back on and host another president, which makes for a great conversation. And Rise Education has sponsored those episodes as well, and we appreciate the work that you do, Charlie. Give us a quick 30-second to minute update on what Rise is doing these days.
Yeah. Rise Education helps colleges more affordably and quickly launch academic programs through a system we call program sharing. So it's a consortium model that allows colleges to integrate online classes shared through a consortium with the courses already in your catalog to offer new things like AI literacy, cybersecurity, business analytics. And it's a way to keep a modern catalog, as I mentioned, really more flexibly and affordably. And I think the really critical part, what we want to keep leaning in on, lets the college continue to offer their core expertise, and we're sort of coming in as a complement. And so it's really only a part of the degree that's being offered. And things are going well. We just started the spring 25 semester and have another record enrollment for us, and up about 60% year over year, which is great. So things are good at Rise, and we're so happy to be back on the Ed Up podcast.
Now listen up.
Well, everybody, if you want to get a hold of Charlie, you can find him on LinkedIn. He'll give you a cell phone number. But if you do call him, make sure it's from the hours of 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. That's when he likes to take his phone calls, mostly in the middle of the night. So please call him. Any time of night, he will answer. Charlie, pressure's on. Let's get our guest in here, everyone. Another Italiano, as it were, and he's in Long Island right now, Strong Island, as they say when you're from the island. Ladies and gentlemen, he is Dr. Jim Lentini. He's the president at Malloy University. Jim, welcome to an Ed Up Mic. How are you?
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Three Italians walk on a podcast, and I'll tell you, only magic can happen. And we need to know, Jim, as we level set for the audience, begin the magic for us. Tell us about Malloy University. Where are you? Who do you serve? And how do you serve them?
Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, original content, invites to special events, and more? Do you want to accelerate your professional development? Do you want to get all this while helping to sustain EdUp? Then go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and become a subscriber today.
Lucian Live is taking place April 6th through 9th, 2025 in Orlando, Florida.
You just made the list!
Get ready for an unforgettable experience at Ellucian Live 2025. Join visionary leaders from institutions worldwide as we dive into groundbreaking ideas, cutting-edge solutions, and transformative best practices that will ignite your passion for innovation. This is your chance to connect, collaborate, and propel your institution into the future. Do not miss out.
Let's go!
We're excited to announce the first ever, first of its kind higher education podcast conference, brought to you by Edu Alliance, the Edu Experience, and Podium. This is happening Saturday, July 12th at the University of Illinois Chicago campus. This is an in-person event, one day only, the first of its kind. This is for people working in and around higher education who are interested in starting a podcast, who may have a podcast, want to learn more about podcasting. So if you want to be there, please go to higheredpodcon.com. That's higheredpodcon.com to learn how you can get your early bird registration, see who the keynote will be, and how you can submit proposals to be a part of this amazing inaugural conference. So that, again, go to higheredpodcon.com to learn more.
Yes, sir. So we are, Malloy University is located on Long Island in Rockville Center. If you know the author Doris Kearns Goodwin, she has a book called Wait Till Next Year, and she's a great historian, and she's from Rockville Center. So is Howard Stern, people like that.
Yeah, there you go. Yep.
So we're about 25 miles from Penn Station. A nice train stop here. A lot of people who work here come in here from the city or from surrounding regions, and vice versa. A lot of the people, I live here in Rockville Center, and a lot of neighbors here work in the city, so it's an easy commute. Garden City's close by. A lot of people know that area. Long Island's a great place. I'm a transplant. I came here from Michigan after being some other places too, but Long Island's a great place. Malloy University is an institution of about 4,800 students. Started in 1955 by the Sisters of St. Dominic, so we are a private Catholic, an independent Catholic institution in the Dominican tradition. And there are several Dominican schools around us. We could get into a little bit of that too, about what Catholic higher ed's all about, who we serve. So Malloy's over its history has had a really great reputation, and it exists still, of course, in nursing. We really are the go-to in this region for nursing. I run into nurses everywhere in all the health systems around here who come from Malloy. They're about 50% of our enrollment. And we have a School of Business that does a great job, School of Education with a long history, and Arts and Sciences. Some of our bigger majors, I mentioned nursing, biology is a big one, psychology is a big one. We have I want to mention one other thing, our theater program here. We have a theater program called musical theater, CAP 21, CAP 21. It used to be in the city. They moved here to... it's sort of an independent group. It moved here to Malloy, I think, in 2018, right before I got here. And CAP 21, this theater program, we recruit from all over the country. Our graduates are on Broadway. Most recently, Nichelle Lewis, one of our 2021 graduates, was Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz on Broadway. And that's the kind of student we're producing here. So it's a great place. I mean, our students do really, really well. The retention rates, graduation rates, really, really good. We're lucky to be in Nassau County, one of the larger counties around, very populated, and a lot of our students commute and live and come here from Nassau County. That theater program I mentioned, we have one teaching site in Lower Manhattan that services some of those theater students, and we have a Suffolk Center too in Suffolk County that does some of our nursing teaching. So that's a few things about us.
Amazing.
Jim, so many questions. And the first being that, you're in the Northeast right now is a pretty known, any campus or college president I talk to in the Northeast, it's like, there's a lot of schools. There are a lot of schools. Yeah. Whatever the narrative is, demographic cliff, less kids going to college, blah, 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 blah. Whether you believe it, don't believe it. One thing is for sure true, and that is there is a competitiveness in the Northeast that is unlike anywhere else in the country. To have 4,800 students and maintain that enrollment, to look at diversifying revenue, how are things going? What do you have your eyes on as you move forward?
Well, you're first of all, the comments you've already made show that you are thinking about the same things that presidents are thinking about all the time. It's
I've interviewed 340 of them or so.
yeah. Well, if you're in a rural area, it's a little bit different, although
Yeah.
I think there are still some common themes. We do have people around us, as I said, but you're right. I mean, the competition is stiffer and stiffer. So what's happening for us? Um, we have, since I got here in 2020, by the way, I'm one of those pandemic presidents. So when I arrived at Malloy, I was provost at a place called Oakland University in Michigan before I came here. I won't get into my whole history. I was at Miami University before that, et cetera. But um, so when I got here as president, it wasn't a normal thing. So I wasn't really sure what Malloy looked like, on a regular day. When I got here, no one was here. Basically, I got here in June of 20, and we went to online courses and all that. But so what's happened is we have now, after that pandemic problem we all had, which affected enrollment and other things, enrollments came back. We have recruited some of our largest ever. They are the largest ever first year classes in the history of Malloy. But on the fringes of other areas, it's not the same. I mean, some part-time students, they're not as plentiful as they were. In our case, graduate enrollment, we're taking a look at some of the areas we need to maybe grow a little bit more there. But to answer your question more directly, so in our case, the enrollment's there, but it's taking more financial aid to get them. And we're doing everything we can to have a studied approach to that. But it's one of those as you know, probably, it's hard to control completely. Yep. You make the financial aid offers, you're not exactly sure who's going to accept them. And at the end, it all washes out and you kind of take a look and say, what was our discount rate this year, right? We do have some targets for that, but it's just hard to completely scientifically get them where you want them. So I think in our area, you're right. I've got I won't name the institutions. I don't want to give them any more
don't
than they need. I mean, but I could throw a stone and you would know two of the universities very close by where we are in this New York region. And we're all competing in some of the same areas, including nursing and including some other, certainly business and other areas. So what do we do? We're a Catholic institution. We try to, we're thinking more about what is our distinguishing feature? What is that Dominican tradition? Students do seem to self-select for Malloy a little bit. I mentioned we have out of 4,800 students, we have about 350 living on campus. So it's a small on-campus community, but we have an on-campus community. And so we're building that. And it tends to be a very friendly place and students get along well. I think it's one of those things, you get people on campus and you try to show them how it would be different going here than maybe St. John's. I'll mention them since they're not that far away in Queens. But the challenge you mentioned is big on our minds. What do you do to differentiate? What do you do to keep, net tuition revenue at least in a reasonable state? So going to what Charlie actually does for a living, is thinking about diversifying revenues multiple ways. We are trying to push more on the online area, more in workforce development, certificates, other areas, and I'll get into some of the challenges with those too. But that's where we're right now trying to expand more to diversify some of the income streams.
It's Charlie, before I pass it over, I just want to highlight what you were talking about, Jim, because when you're crafting a class to bring in your incoming class, you can go out and discount, you can give out tons of aid, and you can give out 98% aid to every student that applies. You're going to have one hell of a class. You're going to have no actual revenue. So a lot of times when you see a student in need and you're going to increase their financial aid package, that means that you have to hold firm on other students that maybe have a little bit more viability in their financial situations, and you have to track it student by student. And sometimes, especially when there's more high need students and you're giving more aid packages out, it becomes very cloudy, and you're like, okay, wait a minute, what's our aid rate going to be? We budgeted for 52%. We think it might be 55. What is that going to do to the bottom line? What do we do now, and how do we bring it down? Well, we probably shouldn't backfill this position just in case, and so on. So there's a lot of levers you can pull, but to your point, it gets hard to see because of volume sometimes of the people who come in. And now I'm going to pass it over to Charlie, who's just messing around.
Would you stop screwing around?
Now you take over now, Charlie.
Thanks, Joe. It's 2 trolls. I'm keeping a troll tracker for this podcast.
You're going to run out of room, my friend.
Jim, you mentioned earlier Malloy known for nursing 50% of the enrollment. And a question that I've been really batting around with a few people that I've had the chance to talk with is, how do you think about balancing investing into the core? Like, we've got this thing, we're known for it, we can double down, it's a growing major, versus diversifying in other areas. I'm not sure there's one perfect answer, but I'm curious how you've thought about that balance at Malloy.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. That's an astute question. So when I first even got here, or I was looking at it from the outside, I was thinking, man, that's a really powerful nursing program that both is great, and it also scares me a little, because what if there is a dent in any way to the market or to the competition for nursing? So I think in my case, to answer your question, we have to diversify some. I mean, there's no doubt about it. So we are looking at, we have hired a PA director. We're starting a PA program here, for example. That's a no-brainer, in a lot of ways. And we have some of those on Long Island, but we did a feasibility study for it that even with our program in place, won't come close to serving the number of people who want to be in the program and who are needed out in the community, just like nurses. I mean, the only reason we can't educate more nurses at Malloy is, it's getting hard to find instructors and clinical placements and all those things that every one of our competitors are also dealing with. So you hit a ceiling kind of fast. So PA will help. We're looking at some other healthcare areas that make sense. They're all high employment fields, right? So students will come out, they get a decent salary, especially where we live here, Long Island. Oh my goodness, cost of living is high. So you have to have decent salaries. And our tuition is fairly low compared to our competitors, which is an advantage for us, even though we're private. So your question, again, being a good one, how much do you invest in your core? Well, I do I think right before we started recording here, we were talking about my degree, which is in music, right? So I've got a DMA, Doctor of Musical Arts and Music. And the arts and sciences, the humanities, very close to my heart, right? So I don't think the answer is to, and this is maybe a bit controversial. We're seeing a lot of boards and a lot of schools across the country getting rid of some of the humanities, getting rid of some of those things. Now, I'm not criticizing them because I don't know their individual situations. In some cases, it might make sense for them, but I'm not sure that fixes what the problems are of a place. Like in our case, we have to be strong in those areas that support nursing, for example. I mean, so those majors in the sciences, I would argue too, even the liberal arts pieces are an important part of educating a student who is a critical thinker and who, could deal with a patient and manage beyond just the knowing the nuts and bolts of their job. I would say that for everything. Now, having said that, it is really hard with some small majors to make, especially as you get to upper level courses when you have 3 people in it. Then you got to ask yourself, are we doing the right thing? Right? And it's so I kind of got off a little bit into the weeds on this, but I think it is that finding that right balance. Yes, support your major. Don't abandon what you're good at, but find those areas to support.
Tell them like it is.
Yeah, I mean, what you mentioned is also interesting on the nursing side, because with nursing you are capped. Like you actually can't keep growing there, and so in some ways, from a risk standpoint, does it feel like a really strong major? Yes, but there is risk to the downside, and there's not maybe much left. And so if you're going to make bets, making bets on some of those other things like PA make a ton of sense. The other thing you mentioned a little bit earlier in the podcast, and you made me think of it when you started talking about liberal arts and what might differentiate a Malloy nursing graduate from another nursing graduate from another school. You mentioned being a Catholic institution, and I can sort of see how hiring as a hospital from a Catholic institution, from a liberal arts institution, could be really appealing when you're thinking about what's wrapping around that nurse's sort of core nursing education. Is that something that you've looked at sort of promoting for your nursing graduates as a differentiator of being a Malloy grad?
We have. Now, I would say that we're still in process of figuring out the right message. And here's where this gets, I'm going to be real blunt about it, I guess. There are some people who I think feel like, well, if you go too far one way with the private Catholic, will that turn a certain element of the audience off, for example? And now I don't think so. I think it's the kind of thing, we have people, by the way, at Malloy of all faiths, some people who might not practice. That's fine. We have a Muslim student club. We have a Hillel club. We're a very diverse campus. And we just became an HSI, by the way, which is another.
Congratulations.
So that's really speaking to our demographic too. Long Island is one of the places that zooming up in the Hispanic population, and even without doing much, it's that's our student body. Um, but I think that the answers for us have to be what differentiates. Why go to Malloy? Why graduate from Malloy? Why employ someone from Malloy rather than another school? What would be some of the markers of difference? So I think because we do we're strong in the liberal arts here. We've had a history of that, and something I hold dear, and I hope we can continue to be strong. That differentiate our majors from others.
Differentiation is such a key word. I mean, especially recently, I would say post-COVID, or whenever you can imagine that COVID sort of ended up until now, as I've been interviewing presidents, there's like two main words that come up a lot. One is differentiation. And it's because what are we going to be good at? Because we can't do everything, right? We can't be this and that, and we can't do it all, because even though we'd like to, we have not the resources, my friend, to do everything. And, there aren't, an abundance of $1 billion donations out there. So, and the second is alignment of leadership teams to be able to create the right temperature and environment for change when the business model, the differentiation, demands some level of institutional change, whether it be programmatic, financial, and the financial model itself. A lot of times it is the programs offered or not offered, maybe as much as what we're really going to do, but also what are we going to stop doing so we can take these resources and move them to what we're really good at. And so alignment is a key piece of change, especially as you deal with those built within the bureaucracies of higher education who tend to not want to accept newness. That could be staff and that could be faculty, and it can be both or either. It can be any combination of those things. Talk about alignment from your perspective a little bit in terms of leadership. How have you thought about leadership team crafting for change? Have you achieved what you've wanted to from a change perspective? And how do you get there if you haven't gotten everything done yet?
Wow. Yeah, that's a very important topic to think through. So you do need a leadership team that can align around a message about where you're trying to go through these are difficult times. I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, this Malloy's doing well. And I tell that to our faculty and staff and administration and our students. We're doing well because I know what's going on out there. Just balancing a budget nowadays is sometimes
that's a big win.
Good feat, right?
Yeah.
And, what happened during those couple of years of the pandemic, as I was mentioning when I first here, that the federal funding covered a lot of sins for schools. You were balancing the budget, but you could see, if we took out that federal funding, it wouldn't look as pretty. And so it's all gone now. We had to work through. Well, we've got to think of our cost model in a different way than we used to. So how do you align? Let me try to just answer it. What comes first? And I think this is really probably controversial. I mean, some people will say, protect everything. You said it before. You don't change anything. Protect what you have and try to do it better. I think we have to look beyond that. It's obvious enough now that just doing things the same way and hope they're going to get better next year is not the model that's going to work for us. Doesn't mean you get rid of every program that isn't enrolling. There might be some. I've taken this approach to it all. One is, where are we under capacity? If you are not enrolling like you should in areas, you got to make a decision. Are there areas you should be? Are you not competitive for a reason you can identify and fix, or not? And that's easier said than done, by the way.
Yep.
I think the other things about alignment are, and this is a little bit harsh, but I'll just say it. If you don't have a strong financial footing, you can't do any of the things that everyone wants to do. So first, the alignment ought to be around. So we built a strategic plan that we approved about a year and a half ago. And I just sent a note out to the community about this saying, take a look at these two areas. These are our priorities right now. And that is build a strong financial model that will be sustainable and thrive for the future. So how do you do that? It doesn't mean you cut everything. You can't just cut, by the way. And you'll see a lot of articles about this. You can't just cut your way to be in a strong place. Where's the revenue going to come from? And, so what we're trying to do, there are some low-hanging fruit things. I mean, I found that even just taking a second look at how much are you spending on things like healthcare, like health benefits, like making sure you're doing RFPs on a regular basis, and some of the business model things that aren't as exciting to maybe academics and others. But we have saved a lot of money this year on that. We found we were overspending on some things that we were able to make some adjustments. So the alignment part needs to be set yourself on some goals. If your goal is to try to make sure you have a strong financial footing, what do you have to do in the academic affairs area? What do you have to do in your IT area? What do you have to do in advancement and all the areas to make sure, okay, let's look from top to bottom. Where are we not being efficient with the rollover budgets and those kinds of things? The team part is certainly not simple. I mean, I am at a school at Malloy's remarkable to me. And I mean this in a positive way. People have stayed here a really long time because they love the place. And then trying to get change to happen can be a little different for folks. I hear it here. I mean, people who've been here 25 years. Wow, it didn't used to be like this 10 years ago. And I would say, I think most places are saying that. We all know, and you do too, the elites or, some other schools may not be as affected. They've got different issues to deal with. But I kind of answered your question, I think, anyway,
I think you did.
On the alignment part.
Very presidential, and I appreciate that because you have to manage multiple perspectives and stakeholders coming in with their own opinions, and yet inertia exists. It exists in positive and negative. There's negative inertia, positive inertia, and sometimes it is the leadership team buy-in that can make the difference in putting something over the edge, one way or the other. Sometimes when you have somebody who's not aligned on the leadership level, it can derail an entire project. And so I think that alignment is more important than ever. And speaking of alignment, Charlie, you and I are always aligned on our handoffs, aren't we? Are you going to miss Ellucian Live this year?
I don't think so.
Exactly. So you might as well register right now at elive.ellucian.com. Ellucian Live 2025, April 6th through 9th in Orlando, Florida. Do not miss it.
Higher Ed PodCon is coming. Go to higheredpodcon.com. That's higheredpodcon.com to learn more. Do you want to accelerate your professional development? Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, original content? That's right, original content, invites to special events, and more? Do you want to get all this while helping to sustain EdUp? Then go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and subscribe today.
Well, I'll maybe break out of co-host a little bit in terms of asking the questions and add on to something that Jim just said there, because one of the things that I really liked about the alignment point was you sort of mentioned even with that strategic plan. And we know that strategic plans, they tend to be comprehensive and they've got lots of pillars and sub goals, but you mentioned sending out this update and it was focused on two things. And I think that's like a key for alignment, is getting everyone to sort of think about like, what is the main thing? Can we keep the main thing the main thing? And when you say something about like strong financial footing, I think for a lot of schools, that's got to be the main thing. And then you sort of think about what can each team do to be a part of that. Maybe it's more RFPs, as you said, like it might be boring blocking and tackling, but it reminded me of a great story I was reading recently where there was a company, Instacart, the grocery delivery business.
Yeah.
There was a point in time where they bring a new CFO on board and he gets sent the first report. And it says that they're losing like $16 on every order. So he goes to the head of finance. He goes, there must be a typo in here. This can't be right. It's saying that we're losing $16 on every order. So the more orders we get, the more money we lose. So that can't be right. And they go, no, that's what's going on here right now. And he was like, oh my gosh, we need to turn this around. And so this whole company rallied behind, we need to fix the problem that we're losing money on every order. And so every week you had different people from different teams being like, I found a couple cents. I found 5 cents. I found 8 cents. And they sort of like built their way up to that, $16 hole that they had. But it all started with his words, like embracing reality. We have to like embrace the fact that there's a problem. But if we name it and we all rally behind it and each sort of chip in on it, we can really sort of get there. And for some reason, your story there, Jim, made me think of it. For like a lot of schools, it's like, how do you name the real thing? Like the real thing is if we don't get to secure or strong financial footing, all the other things on the strategic plan probably aren't going to mean much. But if we can align behind that, we can all chip in. So I don't know. Does that resonate as sort of like consistent with how you think about it?
Oh, it absolutely does. And that's an interesting story you mentioned because I think it directly relates to enrollment of students. People say, well, how's the enrollment? Oh, geez, the biggest class we ever had. You look at the net tuition revenue, you actually lost net tuition revenue potentially. It's exactly the same story, right? So you have to look at, well, how much are we spending to bring them in? It's not really, those of us who are in the business know this. I mean, for some people, head count makes a difference. Gee, we're a school of X number. We grew to, more, but that's not the most important thing, at least not for me and not for most presidents. It's net tuition revenue. What is the net, and is net tuition revenue growing? And I've had a lot of outside analysts look at our stuff here and say, you're one of the few places right now I'm seeing where net tuition revenue is actually growing. Maybe not as much as we want, but at all, it is kind of becoming a more rare story, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, Jim, you mentioned coming from Oakland and Michigan, and we were looking at some statewide averages for private colleges recently. And I think over the last 5 years, and this sounded extreme. So I don't know if maybe there was a few college closures that were getting baked in to make them decreasing more. But across the sort of private sector, net tuition revenue is down close to 16% over the last little bit. And expenses are flat. They haven't budged. Right. They're the exact same. And so like those two things can't coexist forever.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And actually, in some cases, those expenses are going up while the net tuition
inflation
is going down, right? And we're all. This is why a lot of the gloom and doom headlines you're seeing, they have some merit because the things that amaze me, and you were at the Council of Independent Colleges conference, Charlie, and I was there too, and I'm talking to a lot of fellow presidents, and if in some cases you're seeing schools run deficits and I'm talking about the operating deficit. Some schools have endowments to cover things, et cetera, but again, that's not a great business strategy, right? And so for every school that is consistently losing money in their annual operating budget, something's got to change. And I think the biggest challenge for presidents, and some presidents are not surviving this. I hate to say that. See some of my friends I'm seeing, having a hard time because going to your board is expecting something of you as a president. Your community expects that as president, you're protecting the place or, making it an academic institution of excellence. But if we're getting back to the financial model, if you're losing money every year in the operating budget, what do you do? It's some of the things I've talked about, but, it might not be a magic answer for every campus. But it's not sustainable if you're having that operating budget lose money every year. Again, some schools have these big endowments. They can cover it for a while, but I don't know. It's not easy.
Well, in most schools, there are many schools, I wouldn't say most, but there are many schools that take an operational endowment withdraw as a part of the budget making process each year, which could be up to like 4% or whatever it is, as a just a operational fund, so to speak, to build the budget. Then you add in your projected net tuition revenue, which you can do it two ways. You can say we want 1,000 students at a 52% discount rate, and the average, tuition revenue is X, and then you build a budget from there. And zero budgeting, you build it backwards. You could say we want to have, net tuition revenue of $10 million, and how many students does that equal? And oftentimes, when I've been on the receiving end of those budgets, it's like, okay, wait a minute, you want us to have 100% increase in the student body? We have to rethink about how we do these things, and budgeting can get really complicated in higher ed. But you're right, there's a couple things that are pretty consistent. Deferred maintenance on buildings and maintaining your infrastructure, which takes dollars, separate dollars. There's and I'm surprised it's not included in more deferred maintenance these days, but you have deferred technology maintenance because your technology you implement is just getting older and older and older. So you have to think about doing that. And a lot of times we in higher education don't think of it in that way, like a building, but it really is. And then expenses, which are usually flat, or increasing at 3%, 3 to 5% a year, depending on inflation. When if you keep all your other costs fixed and your revenue, net tuition revenue, is about the same as it was the previous year, but your costs go up 3% on your utilities, well, then you're kind of in trouble. So that's when you have to start right sizing, and that's a hard exercise, Jim. Right sizing. It starts breaking brains and cooking eggs, as it were. And as a president, even to breathe that, you're making a commitment to have somebody go, well, wait, what are you talking about? Because the immediacy is, wait a minute, if we have to right size, I'm losing my job. It doesn't matter who I am or what level I am. Immediately, it's the whiffum, right? What's in it for me? If you cut, where am I going to end up? And that's why change becomes so hard. So I think we have to be careful how we breathe those words, but it's a necessity to always look at that business model. How do you stay fresh? Like, what are you doing? Are these exercises that you do? Like, you're always looking at this? Do you have another set of eyes come in? Do you show it to your spouse and go, what do you think about this? You know, like, how do you engage others in helping you, think about the ship?
Yeah. Well, so, I come from higher ed my whole career, right? So I started off I was a music faculty member, assistant professor, made it to full professor, somehow got dragged into department chair, dean, provost, and now president. And I would have never, ever thought that this is how I spend my time, right? If I went back 25 years, 20 years, and I'm sure, and God bless them, that so many people on our campus would have no idea what we're dealing with or how we deal with it, because it's just not what you want to be thinking about.
Yeah.
When you're really talking about being in the classroom and teaching these wonderful students, and, they shouldn't have to, fix the problem on their own, but it's, how do you stay fresh? I mean, I think what I do is I'll tell you that my style, and I know everyone's different. I know it from my own experience working with presidents and from talking to my peers. I take as big and they probably don't always like it, as big a collaborative approach as I can with my leadership team. So I will absolutely make an autonomous decision if I need to make one, but I feel like it's so complicated out there, and this is my style anyway, that you're not always going to see all the angles. So get as many perspectives as you can. Make sure you're seeing all things. I happen to be this year, I have an interim CFO who's coming in with a different perspective. It's actually been refreshing that way. Just looking at things differently, even how you budget and how you forecast has made a little bit of a difference and been a little bit of an uplift this year. But I do think that any leader nowadays who thinks that they're going to be, you read about these things, the Messiah leader model is probably not going to get you through these tough times right now. I think it has to be, you have to have strong teams. You mentioned teams before, and you have to have people who are willing to disagree with each other to try to get you to a better answer on some of these things. I've had a few times where, you realize that we can keep talking about this, but I'm just going to have to make a call, on it. And that does
over socializing, like you can over socialize something and it goes into committees to die, right? So you have to sometimes just call it.
Yeah, I'm sure there are cabinet meetings where they leave and go, why didn't Jim just make the darn decision on this thing? But I just try to, I do try to make sure I got it all before I make that decision. And in our case, I think it's critical to make sure your board of trustees knows what's going on. Boards are all different. Some get into the management pieces. They shouldn't, but some do. And some are more hands off, but your board needs to be a partner with you as you're trying to tackle some hard things.
Go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, Joe, there was one other topic I wanted to make sure I could squeeze in here. You mentioned earlier, Jim, that Malloy's officially an HSI. Another headline that I saw was a big grant from the NSF to bring more students of color into STEM. Was wondering if you could just tell us a little bit more about that grant and how Malloy is leaning into supporting your underrepresented students.
Hey, thanks for noticing that. I appreciate it. I was pretty excited about that. So one of the things I did, it'll sound controversial real quick, but when I first got to campus, 2020, you remember the George Floyd incident and all the horrible things that were going on in the world. Our campus, we've never had a diversity office or anything like that. I know that's become an interesting topic unto itself now, even just not that long after that. Um, but I did bring in a vice president for diversity, equity, and inclusion. We now call the Office of Mission Integration and Inclusion. It fuses our mission piece as a Dominican St. Dominic institution with diversity, equity, and inclusion issues. So his name is DJ Mitchell. He came in, done a great job. So he recognized this grant opportunity out there that NSF has for supporting underrepresented students in STEM. And I was all behind it. We were trying to figure out, it's a collaborative grant. That's what they want right away. So here's the cool part that I thought lined up really well. We have a consortium of independent colleges. It's kind of a loose consortium, but it's a Lower Hudson Valley Catholic Colleges and Universities Consortium. How about that for a long title?
I forgot it already, but it sounds awesome.
Yeah, but it's I'm not going to get all the schools right. St. John's is part of it, St. Francis, Stack, St. Thomas Aquinas. Now I'm going to get in trouble because I'm St. Joseph. I'm missing some schools, but 7 of us agreed to join in on putting this grant forward. DJ Mitchell, my vice president for mission integration and inclusion, took the lead on it with our Dean of Arts and Sciences. We wrote it up with partners, those 7 partners together. And there are all kinds of resources in this that each of our schools would try to ramp up the idea of getting more students of color, more underrepresented students into STEM areas and support them through it. So we got a $3.5 million grant to do that. It's shared amongst the 7 institutions, but wonderful thing for us. And it also these are private institutions, Catholic institutions that got together to do this, which I thought was great.
Yeah, kudos to DJ. I mean, it's one of those things. I know it's a topic we don't need to get into, but that seems like an unquestionably positive thing for the world that office was able to deliver for Malloy and those other institutions. And the other thing I like about it is I'm sure we mentioned earlier, you could throw a stone, you could hit maybe like a St. John's, but you found a way to kind of balance the collaboration element with some of those other schools that have a distinct identity.
Yeah, to me, that was kind of the proof in the strength of working together, right? We compete with each other all the time, right? Whether trying to or not, because students decide to go to one of us or the other. But you can find strength in working together on some things.
Jim, this is you talked about it. Like, this is a challenging time in higher education, but look forward for us a little bit. What are you thinking about for the future? Well, let's do this. Let's Charlie, do you have any other questions that you want to fit in for Jim? You're good. Because I want to add, what else do you want to say about Malloy first before I ask you the future question? Is there anything that you want to talk about with Malloy right now that's going on? Any great work you want to highlight? Anything that's new or upcoming that you think it's worth it for the audience to know? Take a couple of minutes and do an open mic for us.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So I do think that, our mission being one as a private Catholic and that Dominican tradition, the community is really important. So we're collaborating very tightly with our partner organizations, certainly healthcare organizations. Catholic Health is an important partner for us. Mount Sinai, South Nassau is a hospital system important to us. And I don't want to leave Northwell. I mean, all of them we're working together with so many of them who place our nurses for jobs, but help us with clinical placements, help us think about the future. If you know anything about, I'm talking about healthcare for a minute because it's important to society, certainly to our communities, and it's important to the students we educate here too. I see the future being very much tied up into what we can deliver that the society needs in the healthcare industry, and I think that's going to be really important. And Malloy plays an important role in this, and we're proud to do that. But we can't take a rest. We're going to have to keep working on how to do this well and make it work for us and for our partners. Hospitals are not having an easy time, as you probably know. I mean, financially and as well as employment-wise. They can't find enough nurses. They can't find enough PAs. They can't find enough doctors. So all those things, I think, are part of our future, I hope intertwined with our partners to mutually benefit the region that we're in. So our people in nursing, in any of our healthcare areas we're starting to get more grants. We're starting to really ramp up some of the work we're doing. You mentioned a $3.5 million grant, but we're working on other grants we think that will help in the healthcare area. Working on a potential facility upgrade here, which I can't announce it because it's still in the works, but it would be something with one of our partner organizations that would house, we're thinking of areas like clinical lab sciences. One of the areas I think that's not only future, it's present. Long Island is huge looking at the biotech industry, and biotech needs people. They need scientists, but they need lab technicians. They need people, to work in all aspects of what happens in the private biotech industry. And Malloy is going to be part of that too. So we see growing in those areas and growing the educational opportunities in those areas. Our community, we are the organizations around us. It blows your mind to see the great work that so many do with our communities who are in high need, those who are, the homeless, people on Long Island who are just really struggling. We see Malloy playing a key role in trying to ramp up support for the organizations that we partner with in those areas. I think there's some great work going on in those areas. We'll continue to be, I hope, in addition, I mentioned very practical-minded things, right? The healthcare and biotech. But I think, what I haven't lost the dream of higher ed for is, again, just thinking about those areas about critical thinking and a whole person education that I still think is important to us and to the future. I haven't lost that. I hope we can keep it alive. It's getting a little bit targeted right now, by I think unfairly, and we need to do a better job of speaking the language of higher ed to people who don't understand the value of it or seem to be trying to diminish it. It's still true. I know that you know all this. Look at the stats still show 4-year degrees is your best thing for your future.
Somehow anybody talking negatively about higher ed does not care that the facts say that for whatever reason.
We're in that world, I guess, right? Yeah. And that's too bad. The facts don't carry the argument. But I still will say, it's a great investment. And Malloy, we're so much part of this community. Our students come from our area. They stay in the area by and large. So we'll be an institution that contributes to our very local fabric here. And that's something that is a winner for us. And I think that's why students come here and stay here. People, I don't know, Charlie, you're a transplant to New York? I don't know, but I am. And what I've noticed here more than any place I've lived, although I lived at Grosse Pointe, Michigan was kind of like this too. People might leave, but they always come back. So they grow up here, the family's here, grandma's here. I mean, it's just, they stay. And so we're educating the future of our region here. So.
Tell me what you see for the future of our industry.
Yeah.
And how it will change.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a crystal ball on it.
I'm asking you to take the crystal ball out of your desk drawer right there.
Well, I do think that the very smallest, most rural institutions will have the bigger challenge, right? They are having more and more trouble attracting students. The enrollments have gotten pretty small. And I get calls from institutions asking if we would partner with them, being the lead institution, because they are not seeing the future for them the same way. And we're looking at some of those. There's nothing imminent. And the partnership models is when you talk to people about all these mergers at CIC, at these these conferences we're going to, a lot of sessions on mergers. And there are some. I sit at the table with some people who are in the middle of it. So it's more than I've ever seen. So I would anticipate there probably will be more of those. There will be more institutions. People wait too long. Institutions typically wait way too long to try and do this. And all of a sudden, instead of merging, they're telling you, we're done after this year. So I guess, I don't want to be real negative about this. I think probably there are going to be more partnership opportunities because of the challenges that very, very small institutions are taking. But I do think that we're going to have to change our institution's business models to diversify these revenue streams, which sounds so easy to say and so hard to do. But it is I mentioned workforce development. I'll get to the end here very quickly, but online certificate programs, we're going to do them. They're going to work. but the revenue models are different. You don't usually charge as much for those. So you have to then, volume has to take.
Yeah. Also, the business to consumer marketing is not as, it makes sense to market to direct to consumer with a degree, right, but less so for a certificate. At Ellucian Live 2025, we're going to explore the magic of innovation. We want to imagine, believe, and achieve. It's happening April 6th through 9th, 2025 in Orlando, Florida, and we're going to explore technology, modernization, and
artificial intelligence.
Explore the latest technology solutions, discover industry insights, and make valuable connections as a global community. It's time to register for Ellucian Live 2025 at elive.ellucian.com.
Higher Ed PodCon is coming. Go to higheredpodcon.com. That's higheredpodcon.com to learn more. Do you want to get invites to special events? Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, behind-the-scenes episodes, and original content? Do you want to accelerate your professional development? Well, you can go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and become a subscriber today.
Yeah, so it's things like that, which all in all, no one magic bullet, but we have to be thinking more broadly. So this notion that we fight as presidents and we get targeted for oftentimes of not holding on to the traditional model, we're in an impossible situation if we just keep doing what we're doing. We can't. We're going to have to really change some things about our institutions and hopefully keep those very great things that we all want to keep. But we have to figure out a way then to do it with new thinking.
Charlie, what did you think of this conversation with Jim here? You gave him some pretty tough questions.
I thought it was great. And maybe the place that I would close, because we started talking about being on Long Island. And even as you were mentioning the online certificates and the volume and the challenges of business to consumer marketing, I think for a place like Malloy, you just, Jim, rattling off your local partnerships, this hospital, who you're building for, that's where I think strength for a lot of smaller colleges, independent colleges is really knowing your local environment and continuing to build and serve that market. And so I think that really rings through in how you hear Jim talk about Malloy and how they've been able to have things like largest incoming classes and have 4,800 students. I just think that's to me, a key lesson to take away is when you actually know your local environment, when you build with them, in terms of how you even think about entering this future, I think you're going to be much better positioned. And as Jim said, granted, it's harder when you're small and rural and really out there. For some, they maybe don't have as much opportunity, but I just think that has to be a part of the equation.
Yeah, and what we try to do here at EdUp, and you all know this if you're a listener. I mean, we've interviewed over 330 or so college presidents from all across the world. It's a friggin' hard job. It's a hard job. And so when we're forced to change the business model, either you could be a part of that change and help 99% of the people at the institution keep their jobs and maybe a couple, you consolidate positions or otherwise, or you fight against that change and the institution closes. And it's not hard to see examples of that across the industry. So it's like, at some point we're faced with a change or die mentality, and especially as artificial intelligence starts to give us more efficient ways of doing business, you look forward and you say, how can this help us do business in better ways with the model we have and evolving that model instead of, oh no, we have to get something quick to save our institution. And it's presidents like Dr. Jim here that are thinking forward, and we're honored to be able to help highlight the work that you're doing, Jim. And any final words for the audience?
So we should all keep our faith in higher education, all of us. We have to really just make sure that we do everything possible to protect those things that are that we find are valuable about it, while adapting as needed to make sure that we can thrive into the future. I mean, that's the key for all of us, to try to remain optimistic in the face of challenges that will continue. We didn't even get into the AI part, but yes, that's another.
It's you know what? You can only do so much in an hour, Jim. We'll have to have you back to have that conversation because it is a doozy as well. But my guest co-host today, he's none other than Charlie Anastasi. He's the VP of Partnerships at Rise Education. And Charlie, it's always an honor here having you as my co-pilot, my friend.
Honored to be back. Thank you, Joe.
Ladies and gentlemen, he's your guest today. He is Dr. Jim Lentini. He is the president at Malloy University, and you just upped.